What's up everyone, Pierre here from Stream and Sea. I hope that you guys are doing well. Spring is here, spring has finally sprung, and it's time to hit the water. It's time to hit the rivers, and on all the accounts that we've heard, the rivers are fishing very well, whether you're fishing the Vaal River, the Orange River, the Cape streams. I know that the guys over in KZN are experiencing slightly lower waters in the Eastern Cape as well. But yeah, it all looks like it's going to be a very lucky fishing summer. This tutorial is going to be a fly that most guys have in their boxes, even on small streams. It's a fly that gives you a lot of options on the water, especially on those tough days. And it gives you a lot of options, especially when you refish water. So the comp guys use the fly, but recreational anglers too, especially when the wind blows into your face, you can't get a dry fly out, or a nymph and a dry fly out, a dry dropper rig. This fly really helps to convert on those days that are really slow. So obviously this is a little jig bugger. This is, yeah, it's one of our go-to patterns, especially when we guide newcomers on the streams. And after a full day's fishing, we haven't really produced anything. Then we put one of these on and we fish downstream through the bigger pools that we have covered. And usually we pick up a couple of fish. It's really a cool pattern. And even a little pattern like this, even though it's tied on a jig hook, works exceptionally well on stillwater trout, and even some, you know, wouldn't think twice about throwing this at some smallies as well, especially when they're feeding hard in the rapids. But anyway, that aside, there's nothing special to this pattern itself, but it's a great pattern if you want to get started into fly tying. This is a pattern that we would definitely recommend you start with. Helps you to work with materials that you don't overdress your fly. It's a fly that you can tie and immediately get results in catching, you know, fish. So it's sort of a confidence building fly too, especially when you're just starting out. The materials that we are going to use on the hook side, we are using a new Falling Mill hook, the Jig Force Short. Now this is a very interesting hook. We're tying with a size 16 here. It has a very wide gape to, you know, shank ratio. It, instead of a normal jig hook that has the eye in line with a, you know, with the shank of the hook, it has a normal orientation, but it can seat a jig bead, a slotted bead, very well. So, but the other biggest thing about this specific hook that we love is it is available down to a size 24, which is really cool, and it's super strong. So this is a hook that we definitely would fish to yellows, no problem. Yeah, we have accounts of some small scale yellows being caught with it as well, and it performed really well. So that's the hook that we'll be tying with. This is the size 16, the larger part to the larger side of this hook. We're going to tie on a 3.5mm tungsten bead, in this case a purple one, but we really like this pattern with a silver bead. The tail, let's first go to the thread. Textreme power thread 25 denier in white. Marabou tail, so if you've got any blood quill, you know, doesn't matter. Yeah, Marabou tail. Body is a very interesting one. It is a Falling Mill product that we just started bringing in. It's called SealX, so it's like a Seal's fur substitute. The great thing is that it is super buggy and great for this style of fly. We'll show you now when we tie with it what you can create when you spin it in a brush and how you can comb it out. Really some cool stuff. And then we'll finish off the fly with some CDC. Here got some, like usually a dark or a black CDC feather will work well. Here is just like a dark dun feather. You'll see that when we tie. And then we'll finish it, and then we're done. So that's the basic materials. So let me quickly change the lens on the camera, bring you closer so you can see what I'm doing, and let's tie this fly. Okay, so as mentioned, this is the Falling Mill The actual code is the FM5125, but it's much easier to remember. It's the Jig Force short. This is a size 16. And the cool thing about these hooks also is that they come in packets of 50 only. So although they might look slightly more expensive, they are in fact, it's slightly better value for money because you're getting 50 hooks and not 20 like most other suppliers stock. Put on a jig hook. If you haven't tied with a slotted bead before, what you'll notice when you have the slotted bead in your hand or between your fingers is that it has a small opening on the one side and then a long slot at the back. I don't know if you can see that. There's the long slot at the back. But when you insert the bead, insert the small hole first over the hook point so that the slot is at the back. This enables the slot to slide into the jig hooks, that long nose that it has. And it makes the hook or the bead just seat correctly. Okay, there you are, bead on. So there you are. We'll probably want to tie it in so that the bead is positioned in that direction or in that position, which will force the hook point other way, it'll force the hook point to ride up. Now what we do is attach the thread to the hook. Like that. You'll see this 25 denier is relatively thin, especially for a big hook like this, and it doesn't build any bulk. But now we want to force this bead into this position because we don't want it to sit in that position, we want to force it up. So we are going to build a little thread dam behind the bead while keeping it in place with our thumb. Here it obviously makes sense to use something like 50 denier. This kind of fly, this size fly, probably 50 denier would be better, but there you are, it's positioned in place. On another note, please play around with bead colors and bead sizes. With a Jig Bugger, you can probably get away from a 3mm, 3.3, 3.5, 3.8, and 4mm. Just remember, if you do fish competition, a lot of the painted 4mm beads actually go over the allowed 4mm sort of standard. So if you do fish painted, rather, just go to 3.8. And another thing is, I know that a lot of guys tie on different jig hooks, and that's 100% fine. You just follow exact same pattern. Doesn't mean that you need this hook if you fish a mush jig hook, if you fish a Hanak jig hook, if you fish a Dohiku jig hook, even normal hooks, not necessarily jig hooks, but I mean, normal style. So something like the Hanak H230 or even the Dohiku 302 or something like that can work with this pattern. Open the thread. It's good practice to open the thread every now and then. That just means that when you do wrap your thread, let me just get my tool here, you'll see that the thread is flat. Whereas when I wrap it around the shank of the hook like this, it actually twists up. Now I'm going to take the thread all the way back to where the bend of the hook starts, and that's where I'm going to rest it, and this is where we will tie in our tail. I've got a little bit of a Marabou feather here that I have worked with quite a lot, so I'm not going to get a fresh one. The tail length is also very, how should I say this? It depends on the angler, their preference. You can tie it in longer, and then if you feel the fish actually biting, but you don't, they don't stick to the hook, it might be that they just bite the tail, so then just actually, tear the tail a little bit shorter. So I tend to tie it slightly on the longer side, but I am, wary of the fact that the fish might actually hit the tail or eat the tail or nip at the tail, but they don't actually get the hook in their mouth. So I'm going to go about 1.5 to 2 lengths the length of the hook shank. That is the hook shank length, sort of the straight part of the hook. It's good to have a standard, you know, that you measure up against, you know. So if you have twice the hook shank, you know that all of the patterns that you are going to tie are exactly the same, or the length of the tail will be the same. So the same whether you're tying a dry fly or a nymph, always measure against something. So here I'm going to do about 1.5 to 2 times the tail. When you have the tail, you transfer it to your other hand, your non-bobbin hand. You transfer that and you pinch the material and the hook together right on top of the hook shank. And what you then do is come up with a pinch wrap. So you bring your thread up, you pinch your thread. Now you actually have tension on that material, and you can take your thread down. Let me just do this a little bit faster. And that's a pinch wrap. Okay, I've done about 2, then I just do 2 normal wraps. This is right on top of the shank. I'm not going to trim off the material there, otherwise we create a very hard stop. If I trim off the material right there, we create a very hard stop, or almost a bump that the thread will, you know, slide over or slip over the whole time. So we're going to use this material and just advance forward to build up a very equal or uniform body rather. Get a pair of scissors. So here you can decide if that's too little or too much. I'm actually feeling that it's too little, so I'm just going to add a little bit more. You don't want to overdo the tail. In my opinion, it takes away from the fly more than anything else. There you are. Right. I'm going to use that material to build up right behind the bead to force that into position. There you have the tail. There's actually a little bit of undyed feather there, but that's perfect. Right. Now we take the thread back to the base of the tail and we create a little dubbing loop. So what that is you pull the thread backwards, fold it over itself. Right at the base of the tail you make 2 wraps, and then you wrap the thread around this dubbing loop twice to close it off. Otherwise it's open and the material falls out. And now you advance the thread forward. You can leave this dubbing loop here now, that's fine, you can leave that. And then what we do is we just do a small whip finish. You can do a half hitch or whatever you want to do there. And I'm just going to place my thread over my bobbin holder here. Now what we do is you get your dubbing brush, whatever tool you have. You can even use your whip finish tool. And you place some of this SealX Fulling Mill SealX dubbing into there. Now here, once again, less is more. You don't want to add too little because you're doing a dubbing brush. You can't add more. But if you do too much material, it actually, the fly becomes so thick that it lacks proportion. It takes away from the proportion and the whole thing looks, I don't know, like somebody that spent too much time at the Kerk Bazaar or something. I don't know. There you are. That should be more than enough. And then you spin your brush. Let me spin it a little bit more. That's it. Now you take a piece of Velcro or your dubbing brush, whatever you have there, and you just comb it out a little bit. You want this to be like a buggy. You see that? Okay, shot. Now because we did a half hitch here, we can actually use the device's rotary function without the thread slipping off or wrapping extra wraps or whatever. So we're just going to start that wrap right at the base of the tail, then advance forward. I don't want to build too much bulk, but I think we can use all of that material. That's lucky. Okay. Take that bobbin rest out of the way, secure your dubbing loop. Get your pair of scissors. Now it's time to get your brush again if you want to and comb it out even more. That looks sick. I like that a lot. Yeah, very nice. Very, very nice. You'll see it, I mean, it resembles seal's fur. You can see it's not true seal's fur. The length isn't that long, but for a pattern this size, it is actually perfect. You know, when you start tying size 12s and size 14s maybe, then you'll lack the length of true seal's fur. But yeah, this is actually quite perfect for what we need to do here. Now we're just going to take a CDC feather, take a clamp. So if you've got a bulldog clamp, this is one of those SwissCDC clamps. Here I also don't want too much material. Once again, I mean, there's a lot to be said about not tying too much material into your fly. So I'm not going to add too much. So we want to get it into the clip, and it's literally one side. This is the rest of the feather. So you can see that I just clipped off about, well, it depends how long feather is and how, you know, how dense it is. So just about this much. We're going to hackle this right at the base of that bead. So what we do now is take a bodkin or something, a similar tool. I've got a scale here, a dental scaler. Little stream and see one. Oh. Then flatten the thread. Make sure that the thread is flat. If the thread is not flat, when you try to split the thread, just twist it counterclockwise, your bobbin, and then it should flatten out. Once it's flat, just take your tool, if you can see what's happening there, because I'm struggling to see. Okay, shot. Thread is split. Give yourself a little bit of space to work with and add the CDC right between them. Before opening the clamp, it's very important to make sure that the thread actually catches the fibers and not the clamp. And once you clamp, stop breathing and talking altogether and open the clamp before you pull. Otherwise you pull before you open the clamp, and then you have to redo the whole thing. I'm going to stop talking now and just concentrate here for a second. Shoo, that's it. Okay, cool. So now create a 90-degree angle between your bobbin onto your finger and just twist clockwise to close the thread again. This spins this brush. Check here. That's it. Now I've pushed all of the wraps forward right to the base of that brush. Now I've got a lacquer brush there, and I just palmer the material right behind that bead. Shot. Now what you can do is, if you can find a pen, black marker, you can color your thread black, but in this case I don't have one with me. But with this white Textreme, it sort of disappears when you pull it behind a bead, so that's fine, especially the 25 denier. And that's it, it pops off. And there you have it. That's a little bugger pattern that we really have confidence in. I hope that this helps you out, and I know that this will catch you a lot of fish. So please, let us know what you think about this pattern. Be sure to join our WhatsApp group. We've got a couple of WhatsApp groups, so join our Stream and See community on WhatsApp, and be sure to check out the tutorial page on our website to see if we release any more tutorials. There's a couple of them that have been recorded and they're just being edited, so we'll upload them shortly. That's it. Have a great day. Cheers.